Yeah, no problem.
All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Point of View. Ryan's not here today. I'm here with my friend Joseph, and by the clothes we're wearing, you can pretty guess that we're going to be talking about Game 7. Joseph, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, no problem. So we're going to get into Game 7. First, I just want to talk about because we've never really talked about basketball before. It's mostly football when we've chatted in the past. So I just basically want to start with the finals last year and some of your thoughts. So I guess my first question is, what were your thoughts about last season winning the title and what it meant to Toronto and your team after being basically an Eastern Conference team that could never get it over the line?
It was just absolutely surreal. It was crazy seeing the crowd, the parade and everything. The whole journey was just amazing. Seeing, for example, at the parade, at the starting point, they couldn't get out of the starting point for over an hour because fans were just like crowding the place. So it was absolutely amazing. The atmosphere was surreal. And yeah, the Toronto Maple Leafs are the biggest team in Toronto, but the Raptors have to be a close second at this point. And the atmosphere was just unreal. There was supposed to be, I think, 1 million people at this parade, and there was over 2 million or something like that. It was just absolutely nuts.
Right. It must have been big because
I wasn't there, because I had something, but.
Right. No, I get that. It must have been huge though, because every year you guys would, when you had DeRozan and all them, you had teams that were good enough to go deep, and then you ran into LeBron James, and every time you just basically became the baby dinosaurs. And after all that stuff, you finally getting over the line. It must have been incredible. I got to see it. So obviously, the other part I'll talk about in specific to that last season was the shot Kawhi hit against Philadelphia, and again, what was the sort of feeling? And when you beat them, did you have a sense that you thought you were going to make the finals?
When Toronto beat Philly in 7, I actually thought it was possible to make the finals, but I thought Milwaukee was a better team, so Toronto had to really step up. However, man, that shot was just unbelievable. I figured Kawhi would score from there, but the bounces it took just shocked. I'm sure it shocked you as well. The amount of bounces the shot took to get into the net was just absolutely insane. And it was so weird that during that whole championship run, the hardest opponent was the Philadelphia 76ers. It was absolutely nuts. It was just a great feeling past Philly just because they gave Toronto so much heartache. It was just an unbelievable feeling. Second round, which they hadn't done since 2016. So it was just a surreal feeling in general.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it was one of the luckiest shots I've ever seen. But Kawhi had good form with the shot, it bounced on the rim 4 times and then goes in. And then you go up against the Bucks, and they go up 2-0, and I'm thinking basically that the Bucks are gonna, I thought you get back into the series, but coming back in that series, and it just felt, from my perspective, that Kawhi basically, I don't know, it seemed like he was just carrying the whole thing. So in the Milwaukee series last year, when you went down 2-0, did you think the whole thing was over, or did you kind of see them coming back and making it into a series?
Well, I was concerned. I thought they would make it into a series. At that point, though, I thought there was a good chance they'd lose, but it was just absolutely not. It was nuts. Again, that whole playoff run, but that series particularly, just because, from being 2-0 down and getting killed the first 2 games, somehow they figured out Milwaukee, and then they won 4 games in a row and completely embarrassed Milwaukee. Fans to this day don't want to talk about it, I'm pretty sure, Milwaukee fans, because it was just absolutely nuts. And I think it was weird because after Game 2, they made like a switch where they put Kawhi on Giannis, and once they did that, Giannis just got so limited, and it's almost like they completely figured out Milwaukee. So, I mean, it was just unbelievable.
Yeah, I think they have now a serious problem because the same thing happened this year, except it was way worse for Milwaukee.
Yeah.
It just seems like once you neutralize Giannis, the rest of the team doesn't have that many pieces that really make a difference, especially in the playoffs. So that was pretty incredible. Going into the Golden State series, did you feel like they were going to win, or did you feel like you had a chance in that game?
I felt like the Raptors were going to win that series just because I knew Durant was out, and I feel like if he had played, the Raptors would have lost that series. But in saying that, right, like the Raptors, I figured they'd win just because, Lowry versus Curry is a mismatch. Thompson versus, let's say, Van Vliet would have been a mismatch.
Yeah.
But, we have Kawhi Leonard, who's one of the best players in the league. So I was confident that they'd pull through against Golden State.
If Clay
when Durant came back, that was a bit scary.
Right. If Clay didn't get hurt, do you think it would have been a longer series, or do you think it could have gone in Golden State's favor, or did you feel like once Durant got down, you felt like we can get this?
After once Durant got down, I felt like the Raptors could win the championship. I mean, yeah, obviously Clay and Steph are the Splash Brothers, but I just thought Toronto overall had a better team and they had a deeper bench, and I thought for sure that they'd win that series without Durant. When Durant came back in Game 5, it was a bit scary because he got that horrible injury, obviously. But before that, in those first and second quarters, he was absolutely dominating the Raptors.
Yeah.
So that was a bit scary, but unfortunately, he got a bad injury.
Right. I think
that might have changed the series.
Right, 100%. I think he only missed one shot in that game, and then for him to try to come back and win, and try to bring his team back into the thing, and then it was awful, obviously, but then but at the same time it benefits. You get your first championship, which was one of those teams in the NBA that no one ever thought was going to win anything. So it was, I bet that was just like an incredible thing. So after you won the title and Kawhi basically led the whole thing, and it was everything was, you had the momentum. When Kawhi left, or when he was entering free agency, what were you or the people in Toronto feeling about what was going to happen in terms of that, or did you feel like you had a good chance of bringing him back, or did you feel like LA would just snatch him up?
So for me, I thought that obviously Kawhi, when he first got traded to Toronto, there were rumors he wasn't comfortable with it. And I think he did get more comfortable with the city and the whole team. However, I figured he wouldn't stay with Toronto just because I figured he wanted to go back to LA. But I know a lot of Raptors fans were shocked that he went back to LA because, they just won a championship with him and then he went back to LA. So I think that was a big shock for a lot of Raptors fans.
Yeah, I thought there was a good chance he was going to go back to Toronto, but I also thought the Clippers were like a real possibility.
Wow.
Because I didn't think he was going to go to LA to play with Anthony Davis and LeBron.
The Lakers?
Just because I don't know. I just feel like Kawhi's the type of guy that he wants to beat the best instead of join up with them. So he wanted to get his own team in that same city, in the basement of Los Angeles, and try to beat. But at the same time, you guys were offering, besides the money, because you offer a max contract, and then there was something about you're going to offer him a condo where he can live for free and all these other things. And so I thought potentially he could have, that's a hard deal to pass up. But again, I think it changes a little bit with the narrative, just because when LA got Anthony Davis, it just becomes more complicated, just because I think Durant was going to leave anyways, but if Durant doesn't leave and he's with Golden State, and then you have LA, even if you got back to the finals, it would have been much, much more difficult. So after he left, and actually I have one more question. So do Toronto people view him like he was basically glorified last year, or is there any like Toronto people who are against Kawhi now that he left after one season?
Well, I think a lot of fans are really appreciative for what Kawhi did, especially not lifelong, but Raptors fans who were fans since the beginning of the franchise, just because he brought a championship and he played at a completely different level. And also, it's just the stuff about him being a fun guy made him such a likable person.
Yeah.
So that was a big thing. I think there were some fans who are rooting against the Clippers, but I also think, like I said, there's a lot of fans who want the Clippers to win just because what Kawhi did for the city of Toronto and what he did for the Raptors was just amazing. And I think a lot of our fans are rooting for him if the Raptors don't make it past Boston or don't make it to the finals.
Right. No, I totally can relate to that. It's sort of the way I view, just to go off script a little bit, when Roger is going to Inter or coming back to Inter this year, I kind of want them to win just because the association I had with him. So I totally understand that perspective. When he left, did you think you were going to turn into a lottery team, or how much faith did you have that you were going to get basically to this point? Because I'll be honest, I thought the Raptors would make the playoffs, but I didn't think they were going to be, in a game 7 against, Boston or something that, could really push them towards potentially making it back to the finals.
Yeah. I knew the Raptors had pieces in Siakam and Lowry, and Nurse seemed like a pretty good coach, so I thought they'd probably make the playoffs, like you said. I think I expected them to be in like 7th or 8th, but while in the regular season they overperformed like crazy, and credit to the players, but also Nick Nurse for elevating them to another level and bringing them at this spot. It was just amazing to see.
Right. No, I get that. I don't know. I kind of thought it would be about a 7th or 8th seed, maybe a little higher, but I didn't think they were going to be in a position to like really. And it's a game 7, so if you get the next round, Miami's going to be tough for either one of us. But at the same time, they're good enough to at least get back to the finals. Obviously that's not what I want, but if they were able to do that, that'd be pretty special. Just after the year after losing Kawhi and potentially having to play Kawhi in the finals would be pretty fun storyline just from that perspective. So what do you think about this team specifically? Obviously you have a great coach, and I think he's done a really good job. After you guys got rid of Dwayne Casey, I think he was just an assistant. Nobody really knew who he was, and he did a really good job winning the title that first year. And then here again, you went on.
He led the Raptors 905. Yeah.
What's that?
I just want to point this out. He led the Raptors 905, which is their G League team, to a championship before he coached the Raptors, which was interesting.
I didn't know that. So that was part of his sort of CV of getting the job.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, that makes sense. He's done a tremendous job. Last year winning the title, and again, you can argue circumstances, but he still did a tremendous job there. This year, I think he should win. I don't know if all the awards came out, but I think he should be Coach of the Year. He lost Kawhi and basically have the same team. And I know Siakam became an All-Star, but outside of just sort of that part of it, he's done a really terrific job with a team that player for player isn't the most talented team in the world. Let's see here.
I just want to point this out before you go to the next topic. Yeah. So I just want to point this out. I think that, Nick Nurse is part of this new brand of coaches in sports in general, where you don't have these stubborn older coaches that are maybe stubborn in their ways. You have a coach that is more adaptable and listens to the players more. So I think that's a big reason why he's so successful, because he's able to adapt when things don't go right. And he also listens to the players. I feel like he's a player type of coach, which I think, like I said, in sports in general, I think that's where we're heading with coaches and managers. You probably even see it in soccer, just go off topic a bit, where player managers are the best nowadays because, these players are making just as much as the coaches. So you better let them have some input and listen to them.
Right. I mean, you can see that with like Zidane in Real Madrid and Pirlo getting the job at Juve, and then I mean, there's so many coaches that used to play that are having success. And I mean, I'm not the highest on Zidane, but still, I mean, it just proves that. I mean, you should be able to know stuff, and you should be able to coach, and you need experience and all this other stuff. But at the same time, if you're a player, I think just the players are more likely to sort of understand and listen. So obviously with Nick Nurse, I think that's also the case. Do you think he works better with a team like this rather than a team like where you have to manage multiple superstar personalities? Because I think some coaches their best coaching moments come when they don't have the superstars. And I would say Nick Nurse, and I think Brad Stevens in that combo too, just because the team got way better when Kyrie left, and it was just like a different dynamic.
Well, it's tough to say because,
Go ahead.
It's generally just tough to say, I feel like, but I think he can manage superstars. It's just, I think what he does generally with players is he knows how to work with them. He talks with them a lot. He has good communication with them, and that, for me, is the key. So it would be interesting to see if Toronto got Giannis, which probably won't happen.
Yeah.
But it would be interesting to see if they got Giannis and Lowry and to see how he would manage that. But that's just a dream at this point.
Yeah, but in all honesty, though, I mean, I think you guys have a better, like, Milwaukee had the better record and probably a better team collectively, but I think you have, like, in terms of rotational players in your team, you have better than Milwaukee, because Chris Middleton made the All-Star game again, but I just don't think that highly of him. And you have players like Van Fleet and Siakam and Lowry and others that I can't think of right now, but just a whole bunch of guys where and then the dude who hit the Anobi or something like that, I think he's been pretty good in this series. All right.
OG and Obi.
Yeah. All right, so let's get into this Game 7 that's happening tonight. What are your thoughts on how the series has gone so far, and what do you think is the key to getting past us?
It's such an interesting thing. I think, I knew before Boston was a really good shooting team. They're not quite like the Golden State Warriors, but they play very similarly.
Mm-hmm.
For me, they're the Golden State Warriors comparable with the way they shoot the threes.
Yeah.
And defensively, they're just so disciplined. And honestly, I feel like it almost feels like the games the Raptors have won, Boston had been in control, then the Raptors just came back and got, lucky bounces, but I also attribute that to, winning a championship and having that championship blood in them. So I don't know what's gonna happen. I have a feeling that, Tatum, Kemba Walker, even Marcus Smart might be on their game shooting wise.
Yeah.
So I think the key for the Raptors is going to be making their shots, because we know, or at least I know, that the Raptors have a really good defense, and that's not their biggest issue. Their issue is going to be making shots and also selecting the right plays at the right time. So not always just going for the three-pointer, sometimes going inside the paint, doing that type of stuff. So shot selection is going to be key, and making their shots are going to be the key to winning this game, I feel.
Right. I think defense is going to be the key for us. I think it's just not letting those little moments, because I think we definitely should have won Game 3. I think we should have won Game 6 too. And I'm not just saying, it's just over the whole duration of the game. And Boston even had a chance at the end there, and Kyle Lowry hits that shot. And if he doesn't hit that shot, I'm thinking we're going into triple overtime. Yeah. Just because when Jason Tatum is playing like that, there's just nothing anybody can do. And my whole and don't get me wrong, I wanted to get to 7 just so we can have this conversation. Yeah. But I think my whole mindset going into the series was we have the best player, so we should win. Because I think Tatum's the best player in general in the series. I think we might have the second best player too. And I know Siakam and Lowry have been amazing, but Jaylen Brown is. I mean, Tatum gets all the spotlight, but Jaylen Brown is good. And then we have Kemba, and then just I think collectively Marcus Smart, who may not be the most. He doesn't have the sexiest game, but he's gritty. He gets into people's faces. Plays great defense.
Yeah.
So I think tonight I think Boston's gonna win just because they can't lose game 3 the way they did and then lose game 6 the way they did and then lose the series. It's just gonna make us look really bad. But it's still, despite the fact that we've Tatum, and I think Tatum at this point is probably a top 10 player. All of that together, you guys still have a strong team who's won in specific moments that if you don't win in those moments, we probably win this in 5. So I just think, just totally together, it's a coin flip. What do you think about Kyle Lowry though? Because I know he's old as you know what, and he's still being able to perform at this level. I know he's made the All-Star game 4 or 5 times, and I think he's like 33, 34 years old. And I know LeBron's doing it, but that's a totally different thing because Kyle Lowry's always been a guy who can make where he can make All-Star games, but at the same time he's not regarded as like a superstar in the same way as some of these other players are. So what do you think about just Kyle Lowry and the way he's sort of been able to just continue to perform the way he has?
Well, for me, it's just amazing. But I think the thing with Lowry is he doesn't just get points. He does a bunch of other things that I think makes him such an asset. He'll get that good defensive stoppage. He'll draw charges, which is what he's famous for. Same as Tatum, actually. Lowry will just draw charges, and that's huge for the team. He does stuff I think that a lot of the players on the roster aren't willing to do, which is why he's such an asset right now. He may not, score 40 points a game or something, but he does stuff that a lot of players aren't willing to do. And he takes those charges. I don't know how he takes all those charges. It's absolutely nuts. I don't know how you can get smacked on the ground like that constantly and not get injured. So I just think he's willing to do stuff that the other players aren't, and that's a big reason why he's been such an asset for the Raptors this season, last season, and even in the playoffs this year.
Yeah. So would you say, and I know it's hard to say because there's been a lot of players who've come to Toronto and done well. Would you say that he's your best ever player, or if not, who would you go with?
Man, my favorite player was DeRozan, so I'll have to go with him just because of his mid-range shot. Mm-hmm. But you know what? Lowry, I think, overall is probably the best player Toronto ever had over his whole career. Now, of course, if Kawhi stayed a couple more seasons, he'd easily be the best player Toronto ever had just because he was a different level. But Lowry over a whole career has to be Toronto's best ever overall player generally.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's because if Kawhi stays another 3-4 years, then it's different just because it's probably the best individual player to ever play for them. Maybe. And then if you go back, I mean, I really liked Chris Bosh at Toronto, but there just wasn't enough playoff success to justify that. And
Tracy McGrady too.
Yeah, Vince Carter is also. And then you have, other players who have done well and stuff. But it's just like I think DeRozan's a big one too because I know he didn't win the championship, but his trade won you guys a championship. So, he doesn't get a ring for that, but at the same time, he sort of makes it happen in some way just because Kawhi doesn't end up going there. And another one is that Danny Green. I think he was huge for you guys last season. And again, it was only 1 year, and I know he's not in this conversation at all, but I just thought that that he did a really good job coming with Kawhi and doing what they did. And they left after 1 year to go to LA, but they basically came in and delivered on what they were expected to do in the series, or just in all that. Let's see.
I disagree.
Go ahead.
Sorry, I disagree with you on Danny Green.
Okay, that's fine.
The reason I disagree is, in the regular season he did well, but I found he went cold in the playoffs. That was a big issue. in some
Yeah.
points where he should have been hot.
Oh, that's fair. I mean, that's just Danny Green for you, though. So, but I thought just generally, and in the playoffs, he wasn't great. I get that. But through a whole season, I still thought he was important to you guys, maybe not winning the finals, but getting, the high seed to put yourselves in position to sort of win and all that. Real quick. So who do you think should be favored tonight? And yeah, we'll start with that, and then I'll talk about Miami.
Who should be favorite? Probably Boston, because on paper they have a better lineup.
Mm-hmm.
But again, a game 7, you never know with a game 7 in the playoffs. That's why the game has to be played. Because if it was just played on paper, then I'm pretty sure Lakers would automatically win the championship. So would Boston would be in the finals probably. Over Milwaukee too. So
I agree.
On paper, for sure they're the favorite, but I don't know. I'm not going to make any predictions. I'll put it that way. I don't want to.
Me either.
The Raptors.
Me either. I don't want to jinx it if I don't. I think the Raptors can win though. I think Boston has the best player, and 9 times out of 10, I feel like that's good enough. But again, there's these moments in these series when it comes down to small details where they've gone to a certain level of ability. Let's see here. So regardless, if it's Boston or Toronto, do you think anyone beats Miami, or are they is it basically a ticket to the finals?
No, for me, I think that either Raptors or Boston beat Miami, and I know Miami's hot, but other than Butler, I don't see, for example, on the Raptors or Boston, how they can match up against those teams really, because okay, I guess Olynyk would be a mismatch on Tice for Boston. But at the point guard position, Dragic versus Lowry would be a mismatch, Kemba versus Dragic would be a mismatch. So I just feel like they would win just because they have deeper lineups generally.
Right. No, I agree. I think they can make the finals. I wouldn't be surprised if they did. But you just laid it out for Toronto. If you took the Boston route, Dragic versus Walker, I'll take Walker. Then you have Jason Tatum against Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown. You could argue Butler is outmatches one of them, but top to bottom, I just don't think there's they're good. They're both good teams. So don't get me wrong, they could win the finals, but I think Boston's good enough to beat Miami. But we'll see what happens. I don't think it's an conclusion that Miami's making the finals. I think a lot of people think that just because of how easily they beat Milwaukee, but that doesn't necessarily mean that Boston or Toronto can't beat Milwaukee, because Boston I don't know how many times you play Milwaukee, but Boston beat Milwaukee this year, and Toronto's good enough to beat Milwaukee. So it's not like if they beat a team that's better than both Boston and Toronto, then it's maybe a different story. But and Milwaukee just seems to be one of these teams that just comes up a little small in the playoffs. Let's see. After on the Milwaukee point, after Giannis got booted again for the playoffs after an incredible regular season, probably a back-to-back MVP, do you think he should consider leaving at this point if it's just going to be the same thing over year in and year out?
Well, I'm biased, and I think Toronto should go for him. So yeah, I think he should leave, but we'll have to see in the offseason, right? Maybe Milwaukee gets more pieces to help them, and maybe that incentivizes them to stay next offseason. So anything can really happen from now until then. So it's kind of tough to really say whether he should or should not leave because, at this moment, yes, but you just don't know what's going to happen in a year from now. What if they get who's a free agent this year? Which superstar is a free agent?
I'm not sure.
Or which superstars?
Davis is a free agent. I can't remember. I'll look it up. But yeah, but they could get somebody. But like my thing is, I would leave also, just because I don't know if it's this year, but they need to land somebody, or else it's going to happen.
Yeah.
Because like Toronto would be good for you. I mean, I think that would
I
be a
think
good
so
one.
too.
But the one I keep looking at is Dallas, because they have Doncic, who I think I think
Oh,
he'll
geez, that would be nuts.
I think he might go to I think he might win the MVP next year. Um, and they have Kristaps Porzingis there too, and then they have some other pieces. They have a good coach. They have a great owner. It just and the Mavericks matched up well with some of these other players, sort of in in those series. So I found out. So Anthony Davis is a free agent. LaMarcus Aldridge, De'Aaron Fox, Rudy Gobert. This is 2021. Victor Oladipo, Mike Conley. So even if they don't, but they can negotiate a trade for somebody who's going to be a free agent too. But it's just I think they need to land someone, or else it's going to be something. I think they should even consider maybe trying to get one of the Philly superstars, because I don't know how you feel this. I think they should trade one of they should trade either Simmons or Embiid. And Milwaukee, I don't know if they have the arsenal to pull that off, but they could manage something. So what do you think about their situation, and who, if you were going to trade one, who would you trade in Philadelphia?
Man, it's a tough thing with Philly because obviously they probably want to win. Embiid talked about the process, but I think at this point they want to win now. So I don't know if trading Simmons or Embiid would work out for them, to be honest. It's too bad Butler didn't stay with them last year. That kind of sucked for them. But just generally, I think I don't know. I don't see them trading anybody. I see them maybe picking up another superstar, but I just don't see them trading anybody, just because unless they want to rebuild.
Yeah.
And if they do trade someone, I think it would be Simmons, just because if you trade Embiid, you're absolutely crazy, because you don't know what you can get on the other side if you trade Embiid. Like, you probably can get a lot, but can you get a franchise that makes the playoffs without Embiid? That's a big question. Can you get like a few players that'll help you make the playoffs again? That's a big question.
Yeah, I agree. I think, to be honest, I don't think Simmons and Embiid fit together. I think we've seen this movie 3 times. We always end up being in the playoffs, and even though last year I think it went 6. I don't remember. But we made it look easy, and the coach they're gonna get a new coach, and I don't think they've named one yet. And maybe you got to give them a chance with a new coach. But if they still end up in the same situation, it seems like they have to trade one of them. And I would trade, Simmons, just because he can't shoot and he refuses to shoot. It's not like he's in a situation where he just doesn't have the ability. He is actively not even trying to improve that aspect of the game, which is why. And I get his passing ability, and he's a good playmaker, but they just need another guy to sort of come in to help Embiid, just because I feel like, it's just, I don't know, they're just not in a good situation, because they tanked for 3 years. And yes, they got Simmons and Embiid, but they also drafted Markelle Fultz, Michael Carter-Williams, Noel, I think, was there too, or something like that. And so they just, it's just a really not well situation. While Boston can't tank and just made good deals and got Tatum, they got Brown, and so on and so forth, just because and they didn't tank. So I think the whole tanking thing, it didn't work. It worked because they now have a team that's making the playoffs consistently, but it didn't work to the point where they were supposed to be contending for championships. It was just the process is just dead. It's just I just didn't think it made sense at the time, and it's just at some point they have to hold on to or try to fix the situation, because they can't if they go out in the second round next year again, or the first round or whatever, then they have to break it up, because it just seems like a reoccurring tale. Let's see, one more topic for the NBA. Who do you think
I'm not a huge fan. Okay.
Go ahead.
So no, I just want to point this out. I mean, I might sound like a hypocrite because in hockey, my Leafs tank to get Austin Matthews. But you know what? Generally in sports, I don't believe in tanking, just because you're just relying on getting a really good player, whereas your scouts should every year be picking out good players, like diamonds in the rough, if you have good scouting. So like, the tanking is just really gambling.
Right, and tanking is stupid, and here's why. Last year, the teams that were trying to lose actively, none of them ended up in the top, getting the number one pick. And the Knicks got 3, but the Hawks were out of there. The Wizards were out of there. Like, all the teams that were trying to lose last year didn't get a top lottery pick, and this year, all the teams that were trying to lose didn't get a lottery pick either. So it's just like, it shows that it doesn't work in the NBA. In the NFL, I guess it could work just because there's no draft lottery, but the NBA, it's just based on random. And the Timberwolves are awful. And I'm from the the state where they play, but they weren't. It wasn't like they were trying. Yeah, they're trying to lose. The reason, just so everyone knows, the reason I'm a Celtics fan is because my stepdad's family is from that area, and that's why. But I want the Wolves to do well, and I'm thrilled they got the number one pick. But the Wolves didn't. Just the way they approached the season, they're not good, but they weren't trying to lose. Because if you're trying to lose, you don't acquire D'Angelo Russell from the Warriors, and you don't add some of these other pieces they made. They were trying to develop stuff so they could, and now they have the number one pick, and now maybe next year they could be good. But that's why in the NBA it doesn't work, just because the teams that try to lose or are trying to basically put themselves in the worst position possible never end up with the number one pick. So I just don't like tanking in general. In the NFL, when certain quarterbacks are coming out of the NFL draft, then I'm more okay with it, just because if there's like a generational talent in that draft that you want to get your hands on, then it's worth it. But it's also different, just because there's losing in the NBA, there's 3 times as many games. So anyway, one more topic on the NBA, and then we'll do some NFL stuff before we close out. So who do you think? First, I just want to. What's your thoughts on LeBron James and him being able to play at this level at this age in year 17? And who are you backing to win the title this year?
It's just incredible seeing LeBron James do what he does. I mean, I'm not going to compare him to Jordan or the previous greats, because I don't like to do that generally, but just LeBron James is just an athletic freak. He obviously trains like crazy, like any professional athlete. And so I think what you're seeing in general, though, is in a lot of these sports, especially basketball and even soccer and even the other sports I follow, is that athletes are able to play longer because their training is a lot better. So I think it's just amazing to see that LeBron is at this level at this age, and that I don't know how he keeps doing it. It's just absolutely crazy.
Yeah,
to be honest with you.
I agree. I don't compare either, but for me he's number 2 all time. That's just my personal preference. And I'm not a massive fan of. I mean, I'm a fan of LeBron, but not like a super fan or anything like that. I'm not like a fanboy or anything like that. I just think he's incredible. I think it's really hard to explain how someone at this age is still the best player in basketball. At least from my perspective, and I'm no disrespect to Kawhi or Giannis or anybody, because they're all in that conversation. But LeBron is going to be 36 years old, or is 36 years old. I don't know how old he is, but he's doing this, and He made the number one seed in the Western Conference. He has Anthony Davis, but the rest of this team isn't that put together. And for him to just do what he's done is just I just think it's truly remarkable. I think a little bit. I don't want to compare it to Ronaldo because I don't think that's totally fair. But I think just in terms of two guys who operate at the high level in the late age, and I see more decline with Ronaldo and LeBron, so I think it's a little unfair to say, but just generally, but he's still 35 years old and still doing phenomenally, and so is LeBron is on a different planet at this point in basketball. But I think he's just tremendous. So with that being said, do you see the Lakers as the favorite or as the team that's going to win it, or are you backing someone else to sort of win the title this year?
So for me, I believe that the LA Lakers, I think the LA Lakers are probably going to win. I would have said the Clippers when Kawhi went, but man, the LA Lakers just look so good in the playoffs right now. I mean, the fact they're manhandling Houston, who was supposed to be a pretty good challenge for them. So
yeah,
I think they'll win just because they look so good. But the Clippers, I think it's a toss-up between them and the Clippers. But I still think LA has to be favored here. The Lakers anyways.
Yeah. I picked the Clippers at the beginning. I'm sticking with the Clippers, but the X factor for me, because I know LeBron is going to show up. Anthony Davis needs to play better in the fourth quarter, especially against a team, whether it's Boston, Miami, Toronto. And playoff Rondo is in full force. They're winning the title. There's just no other way around it.
Yeah.
If it's inconsistent Rondo, if it's regular season Rondo, then the Clippers have the better team, and I think the surrounding parts will probably be better. And I still think if both teams are at their best, the Clippers are still better. But I think the X factor is Rondo, and if Rondo can play like he has the last couple of games, and the fact that the Blazers weren't good, so I'm not surprised they ended up, nearly sweeping them. But the Rockets are a much better team than Portland and some of these other teams in the playoffs. So the fact that they're handling it so easily when you have James Harden, who's still an incredible player, and Russell Westbrook basically looks lost out there, and he's still a great player. And the fact that they're able to do this.
Russell Westbrook, yeah.
Yeah, because I don't know. He was one of the best players in the league for a long time, and I still think he's a great player. It's just you can see that he's not the same anymore. They're basically leaving him open around the three-point line, and they're basically taking the things that that Houston does well with the small lineup and using it against them with LeBron and AD, and now Rondo coming into the situation doing what he does. So I think the Lakers. I don't want to say I want the Lakers to win, but I think it would be really beautiful if they won, and just because of Kobe Bryant's passing this year, and for them to win the title the year he passes away, and LeBron holding up the MVP trophy and saying this is for Kobe, that sort of thing. But I'm probably still going to stick with the Clippers, even though I think it's a coin flip at this point. It really could be either one of those teams. I would be shocked if the Eastern Conference wins the title, because I think the Lakers and Clippers the whole year have been just a level above everyone else. Which is why, I mean, I want to get to the finals, but at the same time, I don't want to lose it. But, I don't know. Maybe Boston could get – just maybe because of Tatum and Brown. But Butler is not enough. And then you guys have Siakam and Lowry. Yeah, so I just don't see a way the Eastern Conference wins anything. All right, let's just do a little NFL stuff before we head out of here. What did you think about yesterday's game, or how Kansas City still looks amazing?
I mean, okay, so I actually thought Houston would play better just because I know Houston's defense is really good. it probably is similar to Kansas City's defense, but just, man, Mahomes has so many weapons and he's so good. And yesterday, usually he's famous for, eluding tackles and being athletic, but yesterday he showed he can be a pocket quarterback, which is just amazing. He's just so scary. And that offense in general is so scary because Mahomes has just so much weapons too. Mahomes he's just another level because he can do everything. He can run, he can avoid getting sacked, he's also good in the pocket too, so it's just amazing to see that such a great player. We have such a great player.
Yeah, for sure.
Kansas City has such a great player.
Yeah,
not Kansas City.
the Chiefs. I picked the Ravens to win the Super Bowl last week just because it's so infrequent that a team goes back to back.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying I'm taking back my pick because I haven't seen Lamar Jackson and the Ravens play, and I think they're just going to be phenomenal also, and they have a really easy schedule. But the thing that scared me about last night, just Kansas City in general, is the running game. The rookie they had yesterday hadn't played one game yet and rushed for 125 plus yards, and if they can run the ball that way, there's nobody beating them. Or they basically have the dynamic that Baltimore has on the ground. Do that? Yeah, and again, you can't do anything with that. And I get that Baltimore's hard to stop because of the Lamar Jackson. Yeah. But like I said last week, he's a big guy, but he can't take hits or else they're in trouble. So I think Baltimore. I still think Baltimore's going to win the Super Bowl, or the NFL championship. But I think that the Kansas City. I mean, they defended the throne incredibly nicely because Deshaun Watson, I think he's one of the favorites for MVP. I think he's a top 3 quarterback. His offensive line is horrible, and I'm a little worried about the Andrew Luck stuff just because Andrew Luck was on the ground his first 3 years because the front office didn't do anything. So it's like, and we'll get onto that, but the fact that he's basically having to be on the ground so much concerns me. And the Texans have a better running game than I thought. They have good receivers. I thought everything went well together. It was overmatched, and Deshaun Watson just looked completely overwhelmed. So you're a Colts fan. So my question is, any particular reason?
So it was kind of similar to how I became a Juve fan, just because I liked Peyton Manning around 2005-ish. I really liked the player, and that's really how I became a Colts fan. And from there, ever since he left, I remained a Colts fan. So it's not like a reason because my family supported the Manning. I just really liked them a lot. So I'm a Colts fan. I'm still.
Right. No, if you live in a city without a certain sports team, it just depends on stuff like that to really make a difference. Obviously, the last couple of years with Andrew Luck coming back from his injury, it looked like you guys were going to start a dynasty, or I wouldn't say dynasty. I would say a chance of getting back to the Super Bowl and winning. And then Andrew Luck retires at 29 years old, and then things start to fall apart. What has it been like to just sort of go through that with your team?
It was sad to hear that Andrew Luck felt like he had to retire. There's probably a lot of issues behind it. But I remember even in his early years when the Colts were a good team, the one issue they had, one of the two big issues was their O-line was just completely horrendous. And like you said, Andrew Luck was on the ground a lot because he was getting sacked. So trying to run the defensive end so he wouldn't get sacked. So it's tragic, and I think too, I don't know exactly why he retired, but that might be one of the reasons, just because he had so much injuries and he didn't want to risk his long-term health. But I think that's kind of on the Colts O-line because they weren't addressed. It wasn't addressed at all until the last couple of years. And it's almost like it took Andrew Luck to retire for that to finally be addressed, which is crazy. But I mean, there's probably so many factors as to why he retired, but I think that's a big one. Just the mounting injuries he got, not having a good O-line.
Right. No, I agree. I think it sucks because the second you get an all-pro lineman was the last 2 years of his career. If they drafted a Quentin Nelson when Andrew Luck was in his first or second year, it would have been a whole different situation. Instead, they gave him weapons, which, okay, that's okay. But I think the general manager and the team betrayed him in terms of what they put around him. Andrew Luck was one of my favorites. I liked him out of Stanford a lot. I think if he could have played an extra, I don't know. Hall of Fame is a question mark. I don't think he gets in just because of the shortness of his career, but he has a Hall of Fame resume. When he was healthy, he was better than almost any quarterback in the league, not counting like Brady and those guys. So I'm not even a Colts fan. I was very sad just because he was one of my favorites. So you go from Andrew Luck, then he retires, and then you don't have the best year last year. You try with good Brissett. He had moments, but doesn't look incredible. And then now you're going from that to Phillip Rivers. And Phillip Rivers is my favorite NFL player of all time for whatever reason. But going into this season with him now after the less than impressive last year, how do you feel about the Colts? Or do you feel like you should try to push for the playoffs and try to do something? Or are you looking at sort of rebuilding after next year?
Well, since they got Rivers and the form he's in at his age, I feel like the Colts should push for the title. I mean, everything has to fall into place for them to contend for a title this year. Mm-hmm. But I think they really have the team to do it. This is the first time in a while that basically they have overall a really good team. They have a good O-line, D-line, defensively they're good. Phillip Rivers has some weapons too at running back and wide receiver. So I think this is the year they have to push, and hopefully they can become a contender. And based on what I saw yesterday from Houston, I really believe that the Colts can win their division this year. I really, truly believe that. And hopefully Rivers keeps his form up because that's going to be huge.
Yeah. Not last year, but the year before that, he was incredible with the Chargers. And this is what I said this before, but the year Mahomes went crazy and the year Manning went crazy. Those 2 years, if that doesn't happen, he wins the MVP. So it's just like individually also, it's just been, and I think he came here because it's his last chance to try to win something. And it's going to be hard regardless because you're in the same conference with Lamar Jackson and Patrick Mahomes. So, but I think you're good enough to win the division just because of the other parts of your team you have. It's just, I think it's going to come down to whether or not Phillip Rivers can perform. And you don't need him to throw for 40 touchdowns. If he throws for like 20 touchdowns and 13 or 10 picks and 4,000 yards, I think that's well good enough. You have a decent running game. You have good defense. You have a much improved offensive line. And you're in a division with Houston, Jacksonville, and the Titans. And I know the Titans made the NFC or AFC Championship game last year, but I think the Colts have a chance of they're benefiting also from that because I think Jacksonville's going to win like one game. I think the Titans are going to take a step back, and the Texans have a totally new roster, and then so it should. But then again, if Phillip Rivers can't perform and the rest of the team gets with injuries, then you never know what's going to happen. But I think that they're certainly in position to at least make some noise in the playoffs. All right, let's see. I have one more NFL topic, and then I want to ask you. I know this isn't supposed to be on here, but I want to ask you two things about.
Okay.
I want to ask you about Pilrow and Tonali, even though just at the end. So Brady goes from New England to to Tampa Bay. I never thought I'd see that happen. What are your thoughts, like when that happened, and how good do you think they can be this season?
Well, they're in such a tough division. The Falcons are no joke. New Orleans is no joke. I think they'll probably win the division. But it was just crazy to see. I think, though, for Brady, maybe he had a falling out with the New England management finally and Bill Belichick. I don't know. But it was crazy to see that. You're right. And I don't know, man. It's tough to say. It's tough to say. I mean, Gronk is back out of retirement for some reason. I don't know why.
Yeah.
And then they got LaShawn McCoy, and then they don't have a bad defense. So, honestly, they're a team you have to watch out for, but they're also a team I don't really know how they're going to do just because they're in such a tough division. I don't know if they'll be ahead of Atlanta or New Orleans, but I mean, you never know. I think they're going to be in the wild card race. I just don't see them winning the division. But with Brady, you just don't know, right? Although he's up there in age.
Yeah, he's high in age, and he's done well a long time in this age. But last year wasn't great for him. Even, I mean, beyond statistically, because statistically he was okay.
Yeah.
And the last couple of years, I mean, he's not really the same quarterback anymore. His last great year was the year he won the Super Bowl against Atlanta. Because even the last couple of years, he's not been that great. But the problem I have with this is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are playing fantasy football because they have Gronk, they have Brady, they just signed Fournette, they have LaShawn McCoy, then they have Mike Evans and all these receivers, and it looks really nice on paper. It's like if this was your fantasy football team, you probably do well, but I don't know if it really translate to winning games, and I think they'll finish. Their division is really tough though because the Saints, I think their Super Bowl window's closed, but they're still better than the Tampa Bay Buccaneers at this point. And the Falcons, in honesty, should finish second in their division. But the Falcons are also choke artists who often have hype going into a season and finish 6-10. So it just depends what version of the Falcons you see. And I know Carolina doesn't have a lot of great players, but I wouldn't – there's just something – they have Christian McCaffrey, they have Teddy Bridgewater. They have enough pieces there to even put themselves in that same conversation with the rest of them. They'll probably make the playoffs, but if they were to miss the playoffs, I just wouldn't be shocked. But it's going to be interesting to see. It's just going to look weird when he's wearing those colors in Tampa Bay. All right. We haven't spoken since some of this transfer stuff happened, so I'm just going to ask you two questions. So obviously, Pilrow went to Juve. Basically goes from an under 23 coach to the big job. We've talked before. I wasn't. If it's what I previously said is it wasn't a. If it's win now attitude, it's not. I don't love it. But if it's like win now and rebuild, I think it's perfect. But when you heard the news, what were your thoughts on that, especially with you trying to win the Champions League?
Man, I don't really know what Juve wants to do. Obviously, on paper right now, I feel with Pirlo, but with their squad in general, I don't see them winning the Scudetto. But in the Champions League, you never know. Maybe he might provide something different that they haven't had. So I just don't know what to expect, to be honest. I mean, I know for a fact that a club like Juve can't do a rebuild ever, or never mind at this point, just because, that's not how the fans are in Juve. They're very harsh. They expect to win, so I just can't see a rebuild happening. It's possible a retool could happen. I could see them, selling 6 or 7 players, and then they've already bought a bunch, so I could see them selling 6 or 7 and buying 5 or 6. But I just can't see them doing a full rebuild and buying 10 players, selling 10 players at once. I just really can't see that with this team. Mm-hmm. But that just has to do a lot with the club in general and the expectations and the weight of the club in general. It has nothing to do with hiring Pirlo. It's just I don't see them going through a rebuild. I don't know. Yeah. I just hope they do something. If they don't win the Scudetto, I just at least hope they win the Champions League. with Pirlo, maybe he provides something different, like I said. But again, I don't know what to think really, because we also don't really know what Pirlo wants to do tactically. So that's an issue. When you don't know what your manager wants to do tactically, you don't really know what players you want your team to sign. So there's a lot of unknowns at this point. So we'll just have to see.
Yeah, I agree with that. I don't know if it's a rebuild, but it could be a subtle rebuild where you're rebuilding while you're still trying to win. Because when I saw the signings of Kuleveski and Arthur,
A retooling, you could call it.
Yeah, a retool, yeah, and McKinney, which is a sign I really like, just because a lot of Juve fans or a lot of people in general, I guess a good portion of, not like the real Juve fans who watch every week and know what but the ones who are Juve fans but are not watching other leagues, don't know how good this kid is. And to get him for the price they did, and the thing I liked about it, because at first I ripped the whole thing, I thought it was crazy. But then when I started to see him getting rid of Matuidi, Higuain, hopefully Khedira's next, people like that, and bring in like Kuleveski, Arthur, McKinney. And I like the McKinney one because apparently it was a request from Pilro about he banged on the table for him, and I really like that. And I think he's really good. I don't think he gets the press that he normally would get or all that. But no, I think it'll be interesting. I think you're probably talented enough to finish second place. But I just don't see another Scudetto. But Champions League is the one that I think if you win anything, it's going to be hard though with Bayern and others. But that one in particular is really one that stuck out in my mind. All right, the last one I have is Sandro Tonali goes to Milan. We talked a few months ago, and you and I both said that would have been the best move, but it looked like he was going to go to Inter for the longest time. And so what do you think about him being able to or Milan basically stealing him? And does it mean that do you see Milan as a Champions League team, or do they still need a little bit more to prove that?
So what's interesting, that caught me by surprise because I'm on your podcast too that I thought he would actually be here, but I thought he'd go to Milan. But it was just a deal, and Milan basically snatched him. That was just a whole saga was just crazy. I didn't expect that to happen, but that was just an amazing move, and he struck at the right time, and it was a dream for him to play. As for Milan, I really do think they can challenge for the Champions League this year. I don't know about the other teams. I mean, Atalanta, I don't know if they can make the Champions League again.
No, I don't think
Lazio,
so.
I mean, they need more depth if they want to make the Champions League.
I think they're dropping out too.
I just don't think they'll make it.
Yeah, I think it's between.
Yeah, I don't know.
It's going to sound biased, but I think it's between Roma and Milan.
Milan, Roma. Sure.
But it's hard. Like for me, it's hard to separate. It could be either one. But I think a signing like this gives Milan, the fans, a different approach, because Maldini's not done the best work, but getting this one done has to be amazing just from a Milan's fan perspective.
Yeah, I agree. I also think too, like Roma, the manager, and I think he goes under the radar. And with the team they have, I really do believe that they have the potential to make the Champions League, and they could cause a bit of a stir, because I don't think a lot of Calcio fans or Serie A fans are really expecting Roma to qualify for the Champions League or be that good. So I think they could really surprise a lot of people this season. Similar to last season, although they kind of fell short.
Yeah, I think so too. I think Milan all has a lot of good pieces. But I think Roma's defensive midfield of Vertut and Diawara, that's the trump card against Milan, because unless they go out and sign some really big players before the start of the season, I think that part of their team isn't strong enough. But obviously Milan has a lot of good stuff going on. But I think I favor Roma slightly, but it's going to be a coin flip either way, I think. All right. Anyway, that was this week's episode of Point of View. Again, thank you for coming on. This was fun. I wanted to talk about the Celtics Raptors before the game tonight, just so we can have that conversation. We'll be back on Wednesday. We're going to be doing a full NFL show again. It's going to be me, Ryan, and Gabe, and then I'm trying to get a Vikings fan on, but I don't know yet. I have to talk to some people to confirm that. But anyway, thank you for listening, and we'll see you later.